Good morning, Chester County, and welcome to a very special edition here of Locker Room Buzz. I'm your host, as always, CJ Tully, and Merry Christmas to everybody here sitting on this Christmas Eve, tuning into Locker Room Buzz. I'm here to spread the Christmas cheer, as well as give you guys the latest in sports talk. So obviously, we have lots to talk about here today. College football playoffs, we saw round one of those go on this weekend. We saw some teams that maybe don't belong in the college football playoffs take on some very dominant powerhouses here in the college football playoffs. We also had some teams that came back late or surprised us in different ways this weekend, so we'll be breaking down all of that. The Eagles, they continue to win, picking up another big win here to close out the season. That one got a little fiery. We also have lots to talk about here on Christmas Day of things that happened throughout the sports years and on the sports calendar here on Christmas Day, so we'll talk about all of that. But as always, let's kick off things here with talking about our Philadelphia Eagles. As I mentioned, they pick up yet another win. They now move to 10-5 on the season as they pick up a 29-18 win over the Commanders. This is one of the best games I've seen out of Jalen Hurts in a while. 22 for 30 through the air with 185 yards. He also throws for 2 touchdowns. And most importantly, we saw him run for 40 yards. That escapability is something we know Jalen Hurts to have. We just haven't really seen him utilize it in meaningful ways over the past few weeks, and especially early on in the season. So great to see him do that. Somebody else who we haven't been able to see use their legs to their full potential has been Saquon Barkley, but he changed that again this game here against the Commanders. He goes for 21 carries, 132 yards with a touchdown. We also saw Tank Bigsby find his way into the end zone, and he has been a great addition to this Eagles team. I know what Saquon Barkley was able to do for the Eagles last year, but being able to bring in Tank Bigsby, kind of a change of pace, and he's a real big back there. Love everything he's been bringing to the team. But again, Saquon Barkley going for over 100 yards. Very promising here as the Eagles are starting to close out the season, and you're starting to see them get it going over the past few weeks. On the receiving end of things, A.J. Brown continuing to be fed here, 9 receptions for 95 yards. You then have Devontae Smith, 6 receptions, 42 yards with a touchdown, magnificent touchdown at that. And then Dallas Goedert, somebody we've been seeing a lot of this year. We saw him a lot early on. We saw Hurts get away from him, but now we started to see him get more involved in the past few weeks with getting in the end zone. He goes for 3 receptions, 32 yards with a touchdown. He is somebody I've been looking for Hurts to rely on more, especially in the middle of that season when they weren't able to find things to get going. You were seeing them force feed A.J. Brown. That wasn't working. But to see them go back to Dallas Goedert here, I think is huge for this team, and he's a key piece of what this team can do throughout the playoffs, and especially if you get to a Super Bowl, as he is such a lethal weapon in the middle of the field. Some other big things that happened in this game. Cooper DeJean with an interception there. Big for him. They do the whole John Cena, now you see, or you can't see me celebration there. That was fun to see. And then Jake Elliott, 0 for 2 on field goals. I think this is the conversation, and the first real conversation we have to have takeaways of this game here. So missing the 2 field goals over the past few years, 2024, he was 28 for 36 on field goals, and now this year, 2025, 17 for 24. Is it time to push the panic button here on Jake Elliott? Now, maybe the field goal kicking isn't the number one priority for people, and you kind of just expect them to be automatic, and you don't notice how bad a kicker may be until you're in a crucial situation. So with the Eagles picking up an 11-point victory here, it's not the death of them, but that's something when you look at here in the playoffs and in the postseason, can he be that reliable force? And now we've seen him be reliable every year that he's been here with the Eagles in the postseason, but he's continued to fall off here, and it's getting to that point as to whether or not it's time to bring somebody else in, see what somebody else has. The option that I keep seeing put around here is Justin Tucker. He was obviously dropped there by the Ravens. Still a great kicker. I believe that was for off-the-field issues that they didn't want to be a part of. But if the Eagles want to bring him in, see what he has. Maybe not even necessarily sign him immediately, but just see what he has. I think that would be huge here for this Eagles team if they can secure that spot there on special teams. Again, I've been a Jake Elliott fan, but just what you've been able to see in the past few years now and how you're seeing this season start to fall out, you don't want this to be something that follows you into the postseason. So we'll see what they do there at kicker. Some other things that came away from this game, the scuffle, love to see that. Fight for a few yards or a few extra brownie points there with the team. As Fred Johnson, somebody who has cost the Eagles a lot this season in penalties and false starts and everything else. So good to see him get active there. He's solo squatting an entire team. Something else here that I think needs to be brought up about this Eagles team. As we get down to the end of the season, there's 2 games remaining. Do we fight for that 2 seed, or do you start to bench players? Now, I won't say that I'm the one that started this conversation. I've seen it in a few different places on social media, but I did want to bring it to light here on this show because there isn't that much going on with the Eagles. So this would be something to really touch upon here is if the Eagles should be gunning for that 2 spot, or maybe you sit back, you rest some players, and you just get content with the 3 spot, because I don't believe there's a chance that they could fall any lower than that 3 spot. But again, that home field advantage would be great for the Eagles. They've been able to utilize that a lot in their deep runs here in the postseason in the past few years. So I can see where the 2 seed would be important. But yet again, do you want to see injury? Do you want to see the risk of injury? I'm somebody who last year wanted to see Saquon Barkley go for the record, not sit out. So obviously I'm going to say put in the starters here, get as great as you can headed into the offseason or the postseason at that. But I can also see you maybe sitting them that last week against the Commanders. That game's not going to mean too much. You see what happens here next week with the Rams, with the 49ers, with the Seahawks. See how that all falls out, where the seeding relies, and then you can figure it out from there. But I do think the Eagles should look into the resting, especially in that last week. But next week against the Bills, I want to see a high-powered offense go against another high-powered offense there in the Bills, and just see what you have, because this is a possible Super Bowl contention. I want to see how this team matches up with another great powerhouse team. They're going to be on the road in a tough environment there, as they're going to be up in Buffalo. It's a phenomenal stadium, been up there. They're making their new one, obviously, but as an Eagles fan here, I'm very curious to see what they do going to the end of the season. Again, I am all about starting your players. Next week, I want to see everybody playing at their full capacity. I want to see what the team can do, pinned up against another great powerhouse there in the AFC. We saw the Eagles do this a few times this year, where they beat the Chiefs. Where we saw the Chiefs fall off, obviously, but they beat the Bucs on the road. We're seeing where the Bucs are at. So just kind of another litmus test here before the end of the season. Where are we at? How do we match up with these great teams? I would love to see the Eagles put everybody on the field next week, as this team is going to get healthier as well as we come over to the playoffs. Hoping to see Lane Johnson get back involved. We're seeing Landon Dickerson. I believe he's okay now after a scary fall there this week. And then, as I said before, you're going to be continuing to finish out the season with the Commanders the following week. That will be at home. I think that's where you can get your rest in for some of these players. But I don't think you're necessarily going to have to finish out the last 2 games, which is where I was kind of skeptical as to seeing that, is why were people believing that we had to sit the next 2 weeks when this team has been starting to get it going? You don't want to see them get benched and then start to lose that drive that they had. But again, that's just what I think. You guys can always let me know what you think on social media at LRBuzz_pod. You can also check out my website at letstalksports.com. That's LetsTAWKSports.com. But there's lots going on with the Eagles. Besides from that, we're seeing the team kind of gel together. A picture came out, I believe, 2 weeks ago now, where the Eagles clinched, or no, it was actually just a few days ago, where the Eagles clinched, and you saw Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, and Saquon Barkley all sitting around smoking a cigar. So good to see the camaraderie's kind of back with the team. Now Jalen Hurts obviously not smiling, but just to see the team kind of blend like that. I don't believe I've seen many pictures or anything at all of the Eagles kind of sitting like that with their stars of Saquon, A.J. Brown, and Jalen Hurts. So good to see them together. This close out this regular season here pretty much, and see them all buddy-buddy. I love to see that there from them. The other thing in Philly sports, though, is we do get off the Philadelphia Eagles here. The Phillies are looking to possibly trade for a catcher. Now, with this being said, there's a chance that JT Realmuto is going to be out the door. I still believe he is a surefire re-sign here for the Phillies, as we do know they are very close with him. Kyle Schwarber's been pleading for him to come back. I'm sure Bryce Harper is doing the same. If they are to trade out and look for somebody, I'm still on Adley Rutschman. Now, obviously, he hasn't had the last 2 seasons playing very well, but I do think there's still a chance here for him to be a project here with the Phillies. We haven't been able to get many of our young bats going. Maybe Adley Rutschman is just one tweak away from being a great catcher yet again. You can also see him play a little first base if need be, so I still think Adley Rutschman is where you should be looking for a catching prospect if you are to go that route, but I still do believe that the Phillies are going to be staying with JT Realmuto. We'll see what happens. I'm sure that's now not coming until after the holiday, probably after the new year, so we'll see what happens with all of that. But that'll do it for the Philly Sports Talk here. We have lots more coming up in the show. We have college football. Obviously, that's a big chunk of the show. And then lots going on with Christmas here. The Christmas spirit will be alive, going over some of the biggest Christmas movies of all time, IMDb's top 10 ranking. And then we also have some of the biggest games that happened on Christmas Day in sports. So stay tuned here, 95.3 WCHE. And welcome back to Locker Room Buzz. I'm your jolly host, CJ Tully. Again, Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you for tuning in here on Christmas Eve, talking the latest in sports and some big Christmas stories as well. We'll be going over the IMDb top 10 Christmas movies of all time. Let's start off here with number 10. We have Gremlins, the 1984 film, one of my favorite movies of all time. It's just a fun little story here. and I love Gizmo. It's actually what I want to name one of my dogs when I get older. But I do think this is a great movie. A lot of people don't necessarily consider it a Christmas movie, but I'm under the belief that any movie that is centered around Christmas and takes place around Christmas is a Christmas movie. So Gremlins coming in there at number 10, not a Halloween movie in this instance. Number 9, we have The Miracle on 34th Street. This is the rendition from 1947. I recently saw the more recent one with the girl who plays Matilda. Not sure what year that one came out, but that's my favorite rendition of The Miracle on 34th Street. That's the one I grew up watching. But the 1947 version comes in here at number 9. Number 8, we have A Christmas Story. Now, I will admit here, this is not a Christmas movie that I enjoy. I know this is a cult following of Christmas movies here. That's from 1983. The Fragile, is that Italian? That's the one line I really know for that, or you shoot your eye out. But I've never really enjoyed the movie to sit down and watch it multiple times. But I know this is, like I said, a cult following of Christmas movies, so lots of people are going to be in on this one at number 8. Number 7, this movie I've been catching a lot of hate from recently from people when they say that this movie's overrated and that it's just not all of that. That is Elf from 2003. This is a movie I love this movie. I think it's funny, but a lot of people seem to just not enjoy anymore. I don't know if that's the overhyping of it, but I always think it's a go-to. It's a great Christmas movie, always playing on TV. So Elf in there at number 7. Number 6 is my favorite Christmas movie of all time. That's National Lampoon's Christmas. I was Cousin Eddie for Halloween this year. You pretty much quote this movie line for line. It's one of the best. 1989 film there. Obviously, Chevy Chase at the helm in that movie. You have Elaine from Seinfeld. I actually don't remember her actual name. But just, it's a great movie. Obviously, that whole series, they switch in and out different characters. So, not very congruent with the rest of the National Lampoon series there. But great movie. Lots of fun. It definitely gets better the older you get. I can't say that this was one of the movies that I'd watch younger. You definitely pick up on more of the jokes, and it's not as uncomfortable to watch with family the older you get. So National Lampoon's Christmas in there at number 6. Number 5, we go to our first cartoonish movie here, as we have Rudolph from 1964. Now, the other day I was actually looking to see how many of these movies that we grew up watching, these animated films, these stop-motion ones, some of these are so old. I mean, some of these come back to the 40s. This one obviously being 64. We'll get to some of the older ones later, but some of these movies are very old that I don't think people understand just how groundbreaking they were when they came out with this clay animation, the stop film animation, the way that they did everything. But Rudolph coming in at number 5. Number 4, we have A Christmas Carol from 1951. This is not the Jim Carrey one, the new animated one that everybody watches, but Christmas Carol, again, what kind of similar to A Christmas Story, just not one that I always watch or necessarily enjoy. I do like the Muppets version of A Christmas Carol. That's a fun one. But again, this is a movie that gets remade a lot around Christmas time. So lots of different renditions. Everybody has their favorites. Not necessarily one of mine. Number 3. This comes back to number 10 here with the Gremlins. But number 3, we have another movie where people are not going to consider it a Christmas movie necessarily. I certainly do. That's Die Hard, the action film. This is another one of my favorite movies just of all time. I love the action. The villain in this movie is phenomenal, plays it so well. It's just a fun watch. It's not necessarily taking itself too seriously. It has the Christmas undertone to it. Just lots of fun stuff going on here in Die Hard. Even if it's not Christmas time, I do think it's a great watch. But around the holiday, everything with Christmas just clicks a lot better around this time. So Die Hard from 1988 sitting in here at number 3. Number 2, we have the first Home Alone from 1990. This is another movie that I see all the time playing on TV. This one and the second one playing nonstop. Now, they have done some more Home Alones recently, some new renditions within the last, I'd say, decade, maybe 5 years, of different versions of this movie. I still think the first one is probably the best one, because then you get kind of tired out with the fact that they keep leaving this kid around. Maybe the parents should, I don't know, just keep an eye on Kevin. Even watching the second one over again not too long ago, as soon as they find Kevin in the hotel, Kevin dips out and goes talk to the pigeon lady. Nobody seems to know where Kevin went yet again. So I think Kevin's just a little mischievous and gets out there way too often. But Home Alone slot in there at number 2. Again, another great watch. One of the classics here. And then number 1, obviously, I think people would really click on this one. If you think of this is all-time Christmas movies, all-time list. It's a Wonderful Life from 1946 coming in here at number 1. No, my brother's a huge fan of this one. Just the underlying story here in this movie is phenomenal. I think it's something that everybody should watch at least once a year here, just to really pick up on the meaning of life, the meaning of Christmas, the meaning of family. I think this movie hits on all of those things, especially with how old it is and coming, I believe it was the beginning or end of World War II. Ryan, don't hit me over this one. But a very fun movie to watch here. Again, it's just the undertones of everything and how the meaning of everything is so important, and especially around the holidays. You know, you got to be with the ones you love. I know I am here today. So just everything with Christmas spirit. Love everything about it. It's a Wonderful Life from 1946 coming in at number 1. Now, those are obviously IMDb's top 10. I want to give you guys a few of my other favorite Christmas movies that should get some love here on Christmas Eve. We've Jingle All the Way. I think this is a very underrated movie. Another fun watch. Doesn't take itself very seriously. So definitely a good watch there. They do have a second one. I believe it's with the guy who plays Mater. Not as great, but again, still a classic. It's one of those that was always on TV growing up. So Jingle All the Way 1 and 2, we'll say at that. Then we have The Grinch, obviously the live action Jim Carrey one, coming in there above all else. So they did just do the newer one. I believe that was 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even older if I'm dating myself. That one wasn't necessarily my favorite, but the cartoon and the live action from back in the day used to scare me a lot. Both of those movies. I was scared of The Grinch for a while, so I'm going to admit that one here on air for the first time. Another movie that I think is very underrated that maybe many people don't know about. I haven't really met many people that know of it. That's Christmas with the Cranks. That stars Tim Allen and I forgot her name, the girl from Scream back in the day. But another great movie, Christmas with the Cranks. Or no, not Scream, Halloween. But Christmas with the Cranks, very funny movie. Again, one of those that I think people don't necessarily click to immediately, but having grown up watching it, it's definitely a cult following here in my family. And the people that I do know who watch it, is again a cult following, like it's a family film that they all watch. Going on here with some of the animated ones that I've seen growing up, that's A Year Without Santa Claus, and Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Both of those phenomenal. Again, stop film animation. As somebody who used to do that when I was younger, I used to do a lot of stop film with Lego characters and everything. A huge appreciation for those movies and just everything that goes into creating a stop film. So lots of fun there to watch those ones there. You also have the Santa Claus 1, 2, and 3. Those also starring Tim Allen. First one of those, again, if you really start to look at some of these and you pull away the fact that it's a kid's Christmas movie, like you can see where the parents are coming from now as you get older with Tim Allen thinking he's Santa Claus. But again, very fun watch. One of my favorites growing up as well is the Santa Claus 1. And then in the third one, the Jack Frost character really always irritated me because he played that villain so well. But 1 and 2, definitely phenomenal films. Scrooge is another one that I've grown to like the older I've gotten. You start to understand the meaning of it a lot more. It's a fun watch. I'm a Bill Murray fan. No, my mom is not, but I like everything that he is in, so Scrooge is a good one there for me. Deck the Halls, another movie that doesn't take itself too seriously. You have the guy from Ferris Bueller's Day Off as the main character, and then Danny DeVito. Again, just a wacky film. Lots of fun to watch, and one of those that if it's on TV, I will always keep on. You also have Mickey Once Upon a Christmas and Twice Upon a Christmas. Those might by far be my favorite Christmas movies. Every time they come on, they just bring back such nostalgia, and I watch those. Make sure that those are ones I watch every single year. There are some of these that I don't necessarily get to every year, but I've always found time to watch those two, as they just bring back so much nostalgia for me. Daddy's Home 2 is a newer Christmas movie. Again, this is one that I want to count a Christmas movie. It takes place during Christmas time. That's Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell. They have Daddy's Home 1. That's just a normal film, and then this one takes place during Christmas time. Hilarious. If you haven't ever seen it, I highly recommend that. And then one that's more on the sad side, that's Jack Frost. That's about a kid loses his father. His father turns into a snowman, and that's how he's able to communicate with him. Again, just a very fun film. Lots going on with that. Brings that emotion of Christmas back, and a very fun watch. Make sure I try and find that one, but that one's a little bit harder to find around Christmas time. But those are the top 10 Christmas movies from IMDb and some extras that I like to watch. Again, hit me up on social media at LRBuzz_pod. Let me know your favorite movies that you watch around the holidays. We have lots more Christmas to come up on the show, and also lots on college football. So stay tuned here on 95.3 WCHE. Cozy up, get cozy, grab a hot chocolate, enjoy the Christmas spirit. Look at some lights here while you're listening, and I will be right back here real soon. And welcome back to a very merry episode of Locker Room Buzz. Again, I'm your host, CJ Tully. Thank you all for tuning in here today on Christmas Eve. Hope you're all celebrating and enjoying the time with family. We do have college football playoffs to get to today, so let's get right into that as we had our first round of college football playoffs this past weekend. Starting off there on Friday night, we had Alabama. They
They defeat Oklahoma 34-24 in a game where Oklahoma held a 17-point lead. Alabama got right back into this one. They had an interception pick six against John Mateer to close out the half there, and that changed the momentum in every aspect here against Oklahoma. Ty Simpson on the day, 18 for 29 for 232 yards with 2 touchdowns. This was again starting off like it was going in the SEC championship game where you just weren't seeing Alabama's offense get anything to go. All it takes is one thing to flip or two things to flip, and everything, all the momentum goes towards the other team, and that's what we saw here with this Alabama team. We also saw Daniel Hill Jr. on the ground. He goes for 43 yards and a touchdown. He was also the weakness to Oklahoma in their game earlier this season, where he ran for 2 touchdowns in that one as well. We did see Jam Miller come back into this game for Alabama after missing the SEC championship game. He goes for just 11 yards, though. Still not able to get that run game going was Alabama. Like I said, Daniel Hill was able to go for 43 yards and a touchdown, but you're going to need a lot more of a run game to be able to make any kind of movement here in the college football playoffs. At the receiver end of things, I thought it was going to be Isaiah Horton who would need to step up in a big way in this game to get things going for Alabama. He does go for 65 yards, but it was Latair Brooks really making the difference here for Alabama in the receiving end of things. He goes for 79 yards with 2 touchdowns. We also saw Jeremy Bernard. He goes for 40 yards in this one as well. Somebody who was still absent in this game for Alabama is going to be Ryan Williams yet again, just 1 reception for 5 yards. We have not seen him have the same season he had last year. He was destined to be one of the best wide receivers in college football this year. We just have not been able to see him get it going. And again, now that we're in the playoffs and we're still not seeing it get going, it seems like Ryan Williams is just not going to be a part of this Alabama team this season. As I mentioned before, we had the pick six. That changed the game. That was by one of Alabama's linemen, Zabian Brown. He goes for a 50-yard pick six. And that was really, like I said, the momentum changer of the game. This is when everything flipped. And from that moment on, I said this is how Oklahoma is going to lose this game. You just saw everything get drained out of Oklahoma. You're up 17-0. You have everything going your way. You're at home. The place is rocking. And as soon as you have a thing like that flip, and Oklahoma is a team that has to play in front. They're a team that has to get great field position to make something happen, and to be able to let that up, that changed everything. That was John Mateer throwing that interception. He was 26 for 41 on the day with 307 yards, 2 touchdowns, and that costly interception. He also rushed for 15 yards with a touchdown, but all in all, that's not a horrible day for John Mateer. 307 yards, 2 touchdowns, that costly interception. But then I think where really the difference was made here for John Mateer was still not being able to get that leg game going enough. 15 yards is all John Mateer was able to go for. You had a 17-0 lead. There was a lot of opportunity for you to roll out, burn some clock, and really keep Alabama on their toes, and he just wasn't able to do that. Again, Alabama with that 34-24 win. The bright spot here for this Oklahoma team was Deion Burks. He goes for 7 receptions with 107 yards and a touchdown. Isaiah Signetti III, he doesn't get going too much here from the receiving end of things with just 17 yards and a touchdown. Would love to see a lot more from him. I think he could have been a real difference maker here for this Oklahoma team. Like I said before, they led 17-0. It was all tied when Alabama got that interception. Even though Oklahoma led in time of possession, this game was all Alabama from there. Still no run game for either of these teams. Like I said, that's something that Alabama is now going to have to work on as they do go into the next round here. But we'll see what happens. They're going to be taking on a tough team in Indiana in their next round. So again, we'll see what happens with all of that. Some common theme here that I think we have to keep an eye on is every team that lost this weekend was the team that was leading in time of possession. So these teams that were scoring and these teams that were winning these games here, they were really just quick punches here against some of these other teams. So I think that's important to note as we go further through these games. Moving on, though, to the next one here, we had a windy matchup here between Miami at Texas A&M, and when Texas A&M took the field, I believe there was no way they were losing this game. That place was rocking. It was incredible. Miami pulls out the 10-3 win, though, in this game. Carson Beck didn't even have a tremendous game. They missed two or three field goals as well. But you look at what was able to happen here in this game, and just Texas A&M shot themselves in the foot, not able to get any offense going. I believe Marcel Reed was the reason for this loss, and we'll get right into that. Carson Beck, though, like I said, didn't have the greatest day. 14 for 20, 103 yards, and a touchdown. So barely scraping 100 yards passing, and they were still able to get it done. Now, like I said before, the wind was the biggest factor in this game, and the player that stepped up the most here was Mark Fletcher Jr. I said coming into the game that I didn't think Miami run game would really be able to get going. They haven't really been able to get going or establish it much this season. Mark Fletcher Jr. had just 600 yards coming into this game throughout the season. Like I said, 17 carries, 172 yards though in this one. He made the difference. A lot of big breaks for him to be able to get this offense going. Keelan Marin was the number one receiver there for Miami with 33 yards. C.J. Daniels, 29 yards. And Malachi Toney had an important 22 yards with a touchdown in this game. Now, Bryce Fitzgerald did have 2 interceptions on the day for Miami, including the game clincher when I believe it was on the 5-yard line was Texas A&M. Carter Davis, I just mentioned the kicking situation. He goes 1 for 4 on the day, and they're still able to pick up the win. There was also a very costly field goal block early on in this game where Texas A&M had one blocked. So the win played a factor. Everything played a factor in this game, especially with the special teams where every yard was crucial and starting position here in this game. Now on the Texas A&M side of things, you had Marcel Reed go 25 for 39, 237 yards with 2 interceptions. Now this is pretty much the same stat line we saw just a few weeks ago in that game against Texas, where Marcel Reed yet again did not throw for a touchdown and threw 2 costly interceptions. I said going into this game that this game was going to be very dependent on what Marcel Reed was able to do holding on to the ball, as well as what he could do with his legs. Both quarterbacks in this game were coming in with 10 interceptions on the season, and that's what I really said was going to be the difference maker, was who was able to hold on to the ball and who was able to hold on to those extra possessions. And then when it comes to Marcel Reed and what he could do on the ground, he just had 27 yards on the ground, and that was enough to be the lead rusher. Now, when you do have a very windy game, you want to rely on your legs and you want to rely on your running backs. And when you look at a team like Texas A&M, who has Reuben Owens II, who's been playing phenomenal all season long, as Le'Veon Moss was out for 7 weeks, he had just 21 yards, and then Le'Veon Moss goes for just 15 yards in his return, with Marcel Reed being the lead rusher with 27 yards. That's not going to be enough to compete with a team where their lead running back has 172 yards. That is what won Miami this game, was the ground game, was the way that they were able to run the ball. And if you're Texas A&M, you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, where could we have done better? I believe it's with the run game. You saw what Marcel Reed was doing early, where the ball was just being whipped out of his hand and it was going over every receiver's head. You then had to rely on the run game, and we just did not see that from this team. On the receiving end of things, you had Mario Craver go for 7 receptions and 92 yards. Ashton Bethel Roman, I said he would be the difference maker in this game. It was getting very close to him being that, with 4 receptions and 44 yards coming in there at the number 2 wide receiver. We did not see Casey Concepcion get too involved in this game. He did get popped on a punt return that he had for himself there, but other than that, Casey Concepcion really not a factor in this game. Pretty much everything that was thrown his way was going over his head. So again, that wind playing such a factor in this game. But we do know that Marcel Reed needed to do more in this game, and we'll see what Texas A&M is able to do next season. They finished with just the 1 loss in the regular season. That was the last game to Texas. But going forward now, is Texas A&M going to be able to keep up this winning ability here within the SEC? We will see next season. When it comes to Miami, will they be able to compete with Ohio State? I know the opening line to this game was 11.5, so Vegas is definitely not thinking that Miami has a shot in this game, but we'll see what they're able to do. They did just get that run game going. That's going to be huge for Carson Beck, but again, he still needs to throw for more. I know he couldn't really do so in this game, but just 100 yards is not going to be enough to get it done against Ohio State, and we'll see if he can hold on to the ball as well. Those turnovers will still be an issue there for Carson Beck, but a big win here for Miami. Congratulations to them. I do want to point out, though, maybe this is just the Notre Dame in me, that Notre Dame would have dominated in this game. If you're able to see Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price running the ball in a very windy game, I think Notre Dame could have put up 30 points in the wind, given the factors in this game and just how well they're able to run the ball. But again, definitely would have expected more from this Texas A&M run game. When you do have such a mobile quarterback, going for just 27 yards is pretty embarrassing in my point of view. At home, in the playoffs, after a tremendous season, everybody was against you, saying that you were a fraud, and you proved them all right here. Moving on to 2 of the games here that maybe weren't as competitive as the rest that we saw this season. We had Tulane head to Ole Miss, and this game was pretty much over before it started. Ole Miss 41-10. They scored a touchdown within the first minute of the game. Kwan Lacey was phenomenal in this one. He goes straight down the field and gets a touchdown, like I said, right 1 minute into the game. Looking at this Tulane side of things, though, Jake Retzlaff, 20 for 35, 306 yards with a touchdown and an interception. He also rushed for 24 yards in this game and then had 2 costly fumbles. I will say, though, this was not the worst game that we saw from Jake Retzlaff this season. He did put in a good performance. Again, those 2 fumbles. And the interception, I still don't believe was his fault. He just was one step in front of where the receiver should have been, and the cornerback was able to get there. But I do believe that Jake Retzlaff played well in this game. He's another one, just like Marcel Reed, should have been rushing for more yards. Just 24 yards for one of your lead rushers on the season. You really need to put it all out on the line here. Speaking of running backs and rushing, Jamari McLure, 15 carries for 84 yards. I said before getting into this game how we had seen him start to progressively get better this season. Started off the season coming in here as a sprinter in college. He doesn't see the ball too much. Then as the season started to progress, he was starting to get more carries, and we're starting to really see him put it together. 84 yards in this game in his playoff debut, so we'll see what they can do going forward with him, or if he decides to stay here with Tulane, as it does seem like a few players are going to be on their way out. They do have a running back who is entering the transfer portal. At the receiving end of things, Chaz Preston, he goes for 5 receptions and 125 yards. Big day for him. I still think that you look at the score of this game, and I don't think it tells the full story. Tulane definitely had their opportunities in this game, but when you're turning the ball over 3 times, those 3 possessions are going to be made up for on the Ole Miss side of things, as they have been playing phenomenal all season. And I mean, you look at this Tulane offense, 5 for 13 on third downs, 421 total yards. The third downs don't look all that great, but 421 yards is almost double what they had against Ole Miss earlier this season. So we started to see some progression there. This would be John Summerall's last game with Tulane. He'll now be taking on Florida. So shout out to him for what he's done for this program and how he's kind of flipped it around from what they were. Now he's making a better name for himself over there in Florida. Looking at the Ole Miss side of this game, though, Trinidad Chambliss, 23 for 29, 282 yards with a touchdown. He rushed for 36 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. That is the kind of performance I was expecting from Retzlaff, but of course we get it from Trinidad Chambliss. He rushed for over 100 yards in their last game earlier this season. Kawan Lacey on the day, 15 carries, 87 yards, and a touchdown. They were even able to control Kawan Lacey for a majority of this game. I said in that opening drive that he just ran through this team, but other than that, this Tulane defense was kind of able to step up. They just weren't able to get the turnovers necessary to give this team extra possessions to keep Ole Miss off the field. Logan Diggs, he also goes for 4 carries with 11 yards and a touchdown. At the receiving end of things, we didn't even see the usual suspects. We saw Deuce Alexander here, 7 receptions, 87 yards. DeZon Stribling, 97 yards with a touchdown on 5 receptions. The score could have been worse, like I keep saying, but the Tulane team was just not able to pick up the turnovers, and they were negative in that aspect. And when you look at what happened in that American Conference Championship, they had forced 5 turnovers. So when you came into this game, you knew they would have to do something like that to be able to keep those extra possessions, to be able to keep involved in this game with Ole Miss, and they just were not able to do so. Following up that, we had the nightcap where Oregon goes and wins 51-34 over JMU, and this score doesn't even tell the full length of the story. The Oregon team was up 34-6 at halftime. This game was well over, but then JMU just does not give up. They kept their foot on the gas, and they put up some points in that second half. Oregon, on the other side of things, Dan Lanning took out his starters, started to see JMU come in here, was very upset about that, and put them back in to finish out the game. JMU, though, Alonzo Barrett the third, he goes 23 for 48, 273 yards, 2 touchdowns, with 45 yards rushing and a touchdown. Wayne Knight on the ground, I knew he was going to be the difference maker coming into this game. He had over 200 yards in their Sun Belt Championship game, but he goes for 17 carries with 110 yards. Nick Girano, he was the lead receiver here for JMU with 5 receptions, 90 yards, and a touchdown. Dante Moore had a solid day for himself here for Oregon, but then you look at the turnovers, and I think that's where you're going to need to see improvement as you do go ahead and take on some better teams later this season. But 19 for 27, 313 yards, 4 touchdowns with 2 interceptions. He also has a rushing touchdown in the game as well, but again, 2 interceptions that against any kind of formidable competition would have come back and bite you in a big way. So Dante Moore needs to work on that. Jordan Davison was the lead rusher in this one with 10 carries and 90 yards. Daryl Hill Jr., he goes for 6 carries, 76 yards with a touchdown. We did not see too much of Noah Whittington in this game, but again, when you have such a lethal backfield, you can rely on any of these guys to get it done on any given Saturday. Malik Benson was the lead receiver, 119 yards with 2 touchdowns. It was cool to hear some of his story throughout this broadcast, as he wasn't really expected to be that much this season or in college football, and he comes out and he shows up in a big way here. Jeremy McLean, he was the number 2 receiver with 6 receptions, 83 yards, and a touchdown. DeCorian Moore did come back in this game after dealing with some injury. I believe he was out 5 weeks. He only sees a reception for 5 yards, though. Maybe they're saving him as more of a weapon as we do go towards the end of the playoffs here. Jaden Lamar did have a punt return touchdown as well on a block, so we're starting to see the special teams get involved here for Oregon. And I do think this Oregon team has enough to make a strong push for a championship. They're going to be taking on a pretty nasty Texas Tech team next week, and I believe the winner of that game is going to be the winner of the college football championship, as I think those teams show you a lot with defense, offense, and they have many different ways to win. But as always, stay tuned here on 95.3 WCHE. We have another segment here for you, talking some more Christmas sports. And again, everybody, thank you for tuning in here on Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas to all, and stay tuned here, 95.3 WCHE. And welcome back to Locker Room Buzz. Again, I'm your host, CJ Tully, Santa Claus to some. But here we go. We got some more to talk about here within college football before we move on to our final Christmas segment here. With everything that I just said about the Tulane game, about the JMU game, there's a lot of talk and a lot of speculation as to whether or not they're going to be able to keep G5 teams within the college football playoffs. Now, you look at some of the great teams that were kept out of the playoffs to be able to put in Tulane and JMU based on the way that things are currently structured within the college football playoffs. We look at BYU, you look at a Vanderbilt, a Notre Dame. These are teams that would have at least given more competition to an Ole Miss, to an Oregon. These would have been games that I think even bring in more ratings if you want to look at it through the lens of what these big guys are thinking up top in college football. So how can we structure this? How can we work on this? Well, I think G5 needs their own separate playoffs. Now, this is a kind of a structure here I've been seeing for a while now, and it's really come to fruition here after you see these games and how there was just no real competition on the field in these games. So you look at a Tulane and a JMU coming from the Sun Belt and the American Conference. Do they truly belong with the big dogs here in the college football playoffs? There are cases that you can put for this. So you look at last year where you had Boise State. A few years ago you had Cincinnati making the 4-team playoff, and those are teams that obviously were built for that. And you see a team like Cincinnati now get moved into the Big 12 because of things like that. But you look at this Tulane team, this JMU team, they are great on paper in their conferences. You put them up against some of these teams, and you're just not going to get the same competition. We actually saw this earlier this season with Tulane going to Ole Miss and having this exact same matchup, so people weren't expecting much different, and they didn't get much different at that. So then you look here at this JMU-Oregon game, and yes, JMU was a great team in the Sun Belt Championship game, where they were really close to Troy for a while. That final score does not tell the full story of that game. Troy did look like they had a chance in that one early. So how can we fix this? Well, again, let's go and let's look at a G5 playoff. Them getting their own teams where you can see a Tulane and a JMU match up in those championships for just the G5 specifically. Now, this would give these players more competition within their own level. I mean, this is kind of, let's break this down even further. You kind of look at this as Westchester, and our football team here is G2, obviously not having the best seasons of late. But if you were to match them up with a Tulane, who obviously doesn't look that great compared to an Ole Miss, that Tulane team would look great compared to the Westchester team. So then when you move Tulane over to the big leagues and they're taking on an Ole Miss, just the competition isn't always there, and it's not necessarily a knock at some of these players. It's just when players and organizations have so much money to put into these players NIL-wise, that truly is just going to take away from what talent these Tulanes, these JMUs are able to bring in. So then you have to think of a way to get them involved without necessarily tainting the actual college football playoffs, because at this point, if that's the structure that's going to be going forward, you're going to get at least one G5 team every year, most likely, and then you're going to look here now with the ACC and how well or how poor they were able to play this season. You weren't able to see an ACC representative, so then you get two G5 teams winning from their conference championships. So yes, I believe giving them their own playoffs would be the way to go. This way you could still slot in two more great teams in the actual college football playoffs while giving these students and these kids some opportunity to actually win a championship, because there's really no shot that you're going to have one of these G5 teams go on and beat a Georgia, go on and beat an Ole Miss, or beat an Ohio State. So panning them up against each other is going to be better competition for them. It's going to be better funding for the school. And maybe you broadcast these games just like you would the actual college football playoffs. Maybe you play them the week of Army-Navy, and then that way you don't take away from Army-Navy, because they're in the American Conference and the ACC. So I think that could be a way to go about this and kind of change things up, be able to give them a better competition and a better structure. Maybe you give them money when they do win the championship, and then that way they can fund better, they can move up, and they can maybe one day be in one of these bigger Power 4 conferences if they're able to bring in the talent to compete. Now, with that being said, I don't just think that any team should get slotted in here in the playoffs if you take out the G5 team. I do believe you should be in the top 15 to be able to make it into the college football playoffs when it does come to power rankings and AP polls and everything else. But with that, I've said before that the competition outside the top 15 is just not the same. I don't think a ranked win should count the same if it's to a 20 ranked team, a 21st ranked team. I think you do have to look within the top 15, but with that being said, there should not be preseason rankings, because let's say that you do have a team like Penn State this year, where they were ranked number 2 coming into the season, and then you saw that tremendous fall off, and it took them a while to fall back, and then you look at a team like Vanderbilt or BYU who weren't ranked this season, and how long it took them to get into that top 15 ranking, and how it puts them at a bit of a sleight of hand here before they can even get within that top 15 or top 10 or top 5 at that. They're really at a disadvantage to what they have on their schedule to be able to get in there. So my proposal, you don't have a power ranking or an AP poll or anything come out until the 4th or 5th week of the season. That way we get a structure to see, yes, this team beat this team, they beat this team. Though they didn't beat that team by that much, maybe they're not as great as we thought. You look at a team like Texas this year. They were ranked first coming into the season. They lose week 1. They get bounced all the way back out of the rankings. They obviously worked their way back in, but I think a lot of that still was buffered on the fact that they were the first ranked team to start the season, so they always had that in their back pocket as to, well, we were ranked high this year, we just had a few bad losses. But I don't think that those rankings should come out until later in the season. That way you're not getting some teams that are highly ranked just floating around there. I'm a Notre Dame fan, but I said this when they were 0-2, that they should not have been ranked at 0-2. That was all just given because where they started in the season, and then those teams that beat them where they started to start the season in the power ranking. But again, let's just get rid of the initial preseason rankings. I don't think that benefits anybody when you look at this grand scheme of things. I think it's good to have those preseason predictions, like I believe this team's going to be great to start the season, so that's where I predict them to be, but that should not mean anything when it comes to what college football is and where these teams are ranking ahead of the season. I think this is the best way that the college football playoffs can go about changing things. It is a shame that we're going to see this change constantly until they finally find the right structure. There's all the talk about going to a 24-team college football playoff or a 16-team college football playoff, and I can see where the 16 teams might be beneficial to some, but then you're still sliding in some teams that I don't believe belong in the college football playoffs. It should be more competitive. When you looked back to where it was a 2-team or a 4-team college football playoff, you really had to show something throughout the season, and now you're going to be fighting for a 3-loss team to make it into the college football playoffs. I'm not sure that's what the sport needs right now. It kind of takes the incentive away to winning all these major games. If you are able to lose 3 games and still make the college football playoffs, I don't know. I'm not really a traditionalist when it comes to college football. I did get into it when they did start the 12-team structure because I do believe it gives more of an opportunity to watch throughout the season. More of these teams are fighting for a spot, so it makes it worthwhile to watch some of these games throughout the regular season. But you also don't want to just let more teams in, because at the end of the day, the top 4 teams are going to be the ones that win, and they're the ones in the Final Four, but you're just giving more time and more opportunity to those lower teams, but it's not necessarily going to put in better competition. So I do still want this competition in the playoffs to be great. I don't want to see it get to a 24-team playoff at all. I think that would completely ruin college football, because at that point, then you're just seeing some of these, I mean, you might see a 4-loss team making the college football playoffs at that point, and you're not getting the best competition involved. That's where I liked the 4-team, because you knew you were getting high competition. You then expanded to the 12, and I like that the conference champions get in. But then you look at a team like Miami, who couldn't compete for the ACC championship, and then they ended up slotting themselves in. I still believe because there wasn't an ACC representative. So it's all very complicated. If you don't necessarily follow college football closely, you should definitely check out my website, letstalksports.com. That's Let'sTawkSports.com. Or check me out on social media at LRBuzz_pod. That's on Instagram and TikTok. I try and break it down to the best of my ability, as I am starting to get more into college football. But again, if you're on the outside looking in at college football, it does just seem like a complete dumpster fire. After every year, you're starting to see the structure change, and everybody's debating as to whether or not this team or that team deserves a spot. But it'll be interesting to see what they do after this season. There's a lot of students still inserting the transfer portal. We just saw Byron Brown, one of my favorite quarterbacks in college football. He's going to be leaving South Florida and taking his adventure somewhere else, so I'll be curious to see what happens with that. He's a very mobile quarterback, so there's a lot of teams that could benefit from that, as we do see these mobile quarterbacks really being a difference makers for a lot of these teams if used properly. Like, again, we just saw with Marcel Reed and Jake Retzlaff maybe not being used properly with the rush attack there at their their capacity. Same with John Mateer as well. One of these guys who definitely makes a difference with his legs if given the opportunity. But we'll see what happens. That's everything going on in college football and my way of fixing the college football playoffs. But we'll see what they do. I did mention that I have one final Christmas thing here I wanted to get to you guys. And that was Christmas Day. Some of the games that we've had over the years, some of the biggest performances from Christmas Day in basketball, and now football is that seemingly taking over Christmas Day. We'll start here in 1961. Wilt Chamberlain had a double-double in double overtime. He scored 59 points in that game with 36 rebounds. The Warriors at the time did lose that game 136 to 135 to the Knicks. Then we move on to 1986. Patrick Ewing beats MJ on his Christmas debut at Madison Square Garden. Patrick Ewing gets put back to win the game 86 to 85 over Michael Jordan there. 1995, we have the finals rematch between the Magic and the Rockets. Shaq and Penny Hardaway both scored 22 points as they defeat the Rockets 92 to 90 in that matchup. 2008, we had the Lakers snap a Celtics win streak of 18 games as they lost 92 to 83 in the finals rematch between the Lakers and the Celtics. 2013, we had the NBA Jingle Bells commercial. Obviously, that's a staple now of the NBA, and Christmas is played on social media every year. That included Derrick Rose, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, James Harden, and Steve Nash. So very exciting stuff there. Obviously, everybody knows that commercial in the sports world, and I'm sure just everybody in general has seen that one at least once. In 2016, we had the Cavs beating the Warriors after 6 months of letdown there after the 3-1 comeback there by the Cavs. In the fourth quarter, we saw a 14-point deficit by the Cavs overcome by a Kyrie Irving last-second turnaround jumper. It's a very iconic moment. I still think it's one of the biggest moments in that rivalry. Obviously, you look at the championships and the finals matchups they had, but that is a key moment in that rivalry that still rings true in my head to this day. And then in 2020, we saw Alvin Kamara go wild in the NFL with 22 carries, 155 yards, 6 touchdowns, and a 52-33 win over the Vikings. In this game, we saw Drew Brees throw 2 interceptions and not even throw for a touchdown. We saw Taysom Hill rush for a touchdown in that game as well, but phenomenal performance by Alvin Kamara, 6 touchdowns on the ground. I do believe I was playing him in fantasy that week or something. That feels like that was a very memorable moment for me, but that was every big moment that I could find there on Christmas Day from some of these games. We're going to have some more great games coming up tomorrow, as it will be Christmas Day. We're looking here at the NFL. We have the Cowboys and the Commanders, looking to see if the Cowboys can finish off strong. Commanders not having the best season this year whatsoever. You then will have the Vikings and the Lions. Lions still holding on to a slim chance at a playoff spot here. Could they get the win at Minnesota and maybe change things for their destiny this season? We obviously saw the Amon-Ra St. Brown touchdown be called back. That would have been huge for that team to continue to go and win something here. And then we're going to finish off with the Broncos and the Chiefs. The Chiefs hang on to their last hopes here. They have obviously no playoff hope, but just to be able to finish out the season strong, maybe beat a division rival, and they do not have a quarterback right now who I don't believe is able to do so. The Broncos, on the other hand, still fighting for that 1 seed, as a lot of teams are now fighting for that spot. We'll see what happens with everything there, but that's going to be all for me here on this Christmas Eve episode of Locker Room Buzz. Thank you all for tuning in here and celebrating your holiday with me. Now go celebrate with your family, your friends. Christmas is a great time of year. Brings everybody together between the movies, the songs, everything. It's just a great time to be around everybody you love. So do that here today on Christmas Eve. Do it on Christmas Day. But don't take it for granted either that it's just the holiday. This is something that we should be doing every day throughout the year. We'll be live again on New Year's Eve, so we'll be breaking down some of the biggest moments of the year. That will be next Wednesday, 11 to 12. That'll be Locker Room Buzz here on 95.3 WCHE. Again, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. That was it for me, CJ Tully here at Locker Room Buzz.